Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tessie Torres, and welcome to our Be Your Student's Textbook Hero presentation. A little bit about myself. Like I said, my name is Tessie. I am the OER, the Open Educational Resources librarian, as well as the education librarian. I've been a librarian for about 6 years now. I've been in libraries for 10 years though. And I've been at UTEP since the beginning of 2021, but this is coming home for me. I've been a UTEP student in the past. I got my bachelor's degree from here, so I'm very excited to be back at UTEP, ready to help the community. So why exactly do students need a textbook hero? As we know, textbooks are probably one of the most increasingly, or I should say the cost is rising at a higher rate than any other education costs. If we take a look at the 3 most expensive required textbooks for core courses, they're all over the $200 mark. We have $243, almost $244 for communications, 1302, $218 for math, 1411, and $209 for stat, 1380. This is all from the fall of 2020, and this doesn't include anything else that they might need, like access codes, lab manuals, anything else. So from previously conducted research and anecdotes from students, like I mentioned, over the past decade, textbook prices have risen at over 3 times the rate of inflation. Students, when interviewed, 66% of them said at some point they chose not to purchase a textbook for a course because of the price point. For some of them, that's groceries for their family for a week. That's the cost of transportation for a month. We do have a different set of students at UTEP where most of them we could say are on that non-traditional course. So we know that they work, we know that they're on financial aid as well. And so textbook prices could prohibit them from really excelling in a course. Student governments, and this includes UTEP student governments, have heard about OER, which is an alternative to those high textbook prices, and they are very much interested in learning more about them and implementing them in UTEP courses. So now we're going to look at how to become a textbook hero. So instead of making those commercial textbooks with those high price points a requirement, we're going to be talking about some alternatives. So we have this chart here that breaks down OER, Open Educational Resources, free resources, and affordable resources. So this chart here, it's just to break down what's similar and what's different about all 3 of these types of sources. We're going to start with the first one, which is OER. So what is OER? OER is Open Educational Resources, and they've been licensed a certain way that makes it, it's been licensed so that way it can be distributed and shared and modified a certain way. What we have here, we call the 5 R's of OER: retain, reuse, revise, remix, redistribute. So OER isn't just something that's free. It usually includes these 5 R's. We break them down. Retain means that you'll be able to download and own a copy of for yourself. Reuse means that you'll be able to reuse it in a classroom setting through a number of different ways. Revise means that you could be able to adjust the content to fit your learning objectives. Remix means that you can combine two or more pieces of OER, again, to fit those learning objectives, and then redistribute. You can share those original works as well as anything that you've revised or remixed. These are some key points about OER. Just because something is free does not make it OER. Again, OER is licensed a certain ways, so that way you can make those modifications. If you're looking at something that's free, it might be under a different licensing or copyright set of rules, so that you can't make those modifications. You couldn't even share them. So just because something is free does not mean that it's OER. OER is also, they're not just textbooks. They can be a number of different types of sources: videos, handouts, PowerPoint slides. So it's not something that's only going to be textbooks. It's going to be a variety of source material that you can use in a classroom. And OER is not static. These materials are licensed in a way that they're always changing, and then they're always going to be freely distributed. When you choose to use OER, there are three options. The first is to adopt, where you find OER and you use it as is. It's great if you can find something that fits all your learning objectives as is, but depending on what you would like to cover, what you would like to add, you're most likely going to use the second option, which is adapt. And that's going to be the revise or remix portion of the 5 R's. So maybe it needs to be more relevant to your learning objectives. Maybe it needs to be updated in terms of timeliness. So you can adapt that. And then there's the last option, which I will admit is very time consuming, but you can create your own OER if there isn't something that's already out there that meets your needs. And if you're not sure which option is right for you, that's what I am here for as the OER librarian. I can help you find OER, and then we can talk about other OER options. Let's move on to the next portion of that chart, which is free. I do want to mention that anything that falls under OER and free, either one of those categories would be considered zero cost to the student. So both of those fall under a larger umbrella called zero cost, where the student would know that they don't have to pay anything additional for those course materials. So free might be journal articles that have been published open access. That's probably going to be maybe something that is the most common when you're looking at free sources. So anything from like Google Scholar or open access journals, those don't follow the 5 R's because the way that they've been published and licensed, they're going to have restrictions as to what you can do to modify that, if at all. Redistribution might be allowed, but it could be limited. So you'll notice that when you start applying those 5 R's, they really don't work. But it is going to be something that's free to use and free for your students to find and read. Another example that we have on this chart is a book in the public domain, something where they can find from the Gutenberg Project, something where maybe the copyright has expired so they can read it for free online. That would all fall under that category. Lastly, we have affordable. This is something that the students have already paid for through their fees, their tuition fees. For example, something that's already housed in the UTEP library. I wouldn't technically consider this part of that zero cost umbrella to the students because there is a cost associated with it. It's just already included in their tuition and fees. This may be something that isn't open access, a journal article that you would normally have to pay for, but the library pays for that through the money we get from those student fees. Again, restrictions limited as to what modifications or changes you can make, if any, and then redistribution could also be limited as well. So that would fall under the affordable because it's not an additional cost, it's already included. So let's go ahead and let's talk about some of those challenges about being a textbook hero because it isn't easy. So we're going to go over some of the biggest, I think the biggest questions asked about OER and implementing it. So the first one is, it's difficult to find those OER free and affordable materials. And so our response to that is that librarians can help you find those OER materials. We can curate those materials and then you can look over them to see if they would fit your learning objectives and your classroom needs. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to give us just a sec. I'm going to get out of that slideshow and I'm actually going to show you this guide. I don't know if that worked. Thank you for your patience. So I'm going to go over and to this guide here. This is the OER guide through UTEP. And so under the tab Find OER, you'll see that we have an area where we've pulled together these OER repositories and we've broken them up based on source type. So we have a section for textbooks, courses and courseware. This one might be the one that's used the most is the repositories. One of our favorites here is Merlot. This is the home page, and you can see that it has quite a bit. I do just a search, we'll just do one on diabetes. You can see just the different kinds of materials that they have. It's over on the left-hand side. You'll see that we have material type. So they have a couple of case studies here. They have online courses, textbooks. So you can see that they have quite a bit of different materials here in Merlot. Another one that we like is OER Commons. And this goes back to how OER isn't just textbooks and it isn't static. So we'll just look for the same kind of topic. You'll see that you can go through different subjects. You can look at different grade levels as well. And then the standard, if you're looking at Common Core, something to fit an education standard. And again, if I expand material type, they have lessons and lecture notes and labs. You can look at a syllabus or a full course. So lots of information here for you to look at. And so this is one place to start with this Find OER page on the guide. Or if you still need further help, maybe none of these are quite what you're looking for, you can reach out to a librarian and we can curate and pull together some OER for you to evaluate. Okay, another challenge is that you're not entirely sure of the quality. If anyone can make and license OER, how do we know that the quality is going to be on par with what we need? So to that, we recommend searching in those repositories with quality control. Merlot has a pretty fantastic peer review process. They try to make a peer-reviewed process that fits the source that's coming in. And then, so look for those quality measures that are in those repositories where they're not just accepting everything from anyone. You can look for those quality measures already in place. You can also look at OER or other materials, free or affordable, that your colleagues have used. So this is another one that's heard quite often. OER and free and affordable materials don't come with those ancillary materials, the slides, the quizzes, the test banks. And so when we looked in Merlot, we saw all different kinds of materials. And so it's possible that while they're not packaged all together neatly with a big bow on top, you would be able to find those quizzes and slides and handouts that complement those lectures and those textbooks really nicely. You might need to adapt or revise some of those OER ancillary materials. And that just gives you a chance to be creative and give back to that OER landscape. So you can adapt some maybe some quizzes or some handouts lecture slides that go along with the textbook that you've adopted, and then you can license them and then publish them again in those repositories. So another challenge is ready-made solutions do not exist for every course. So this one's going to be one response to that, and we have a pretty big caveat. So you can create new OER. That's a possibility. But we understand that this is a big deal. And so we highly recommend that you seek support and resources when creating new OER. Talk to your department, talk to your chair. You'll want as much support as possible when creating OER because it could be a big undertaking, and we understand that. But when we're answering this as well, ready-made solutions do not exist for every course. We can also argue that those commercial textbooks and those packages that they give you also aren't a ready-made solution for a course. There's not going to be a perfect commercial textbook package that's going to cover all the learning objectives that you need to or would like to. So again, by using OER, you can customize either existing OER or by creating OER to better fit your course objectives, your learning objectives. So this is going to cover all of those three, the adapt, adopt, create. So create your new OER. You can adapt by customizing existing OER. And you can also use a combination of that OER, the free and the affordable materials that best address your learning objectives. So assembling new materials is time consuming. We understand that. And we know that even though OER is no cost to the students, there is a cost associated even as a faculty member, even us as support staff. And sometimes we don't pay with money, we pay with our time, which is very valuable. We understand that. So what we recommend is there is funding available. There's funding through UTEP, through the state of Texas, and through federal funding, usually in the form of grants. So we recommend looking into those. Also, you could ask your department if it's possible to take some time off of teaching to support this creation of OER. And then you could also ask the department in the college to see if any time you spend working on OER or assembling the new materials could count to tenure and promotion, something that you can put in your portfolio. We're going to leave you with some tips and strategies for becoming a textbook hero. Look for opportunities to collaborate and work with your colleagues. You don't have to go through it alone. If you are going to tackle that challenge of creating brand new OER, could be a really great opportunity to get to know a colleague, spend some time and divide the work so it's not all just on you. You'll also want to choose a time that works for you. Probably not best to introduce OER in the middle of a semester. So maybe develop something to be used at the beginning of a new semester. And how wonderful to be given the chance to be creative again. Not only with the materials that you provide your students, but also with your learning objectives. If you know that there was something valuable that you could present to your students with, some valuable information, but based on the materials you were using, they didn't quite fit in, it would be jarring to go back and forth from that. So now's the time to be creative with the materials, but also with the objectives. And then lastly, we're going to ask that you embrace us at the library and those in creative studios to help you work with OER, create OER, adapt, modify that OER. Do we have any questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any questions now. It's silent here. So I'll go ahead and if you do come up with any questions later on, maybe while you're working on some stuff, something pops into your head, feel free to email me at the email address on the screen. We also have amazing workshops from our scholarly communications team. There's 4 of us total. So we have this guide, libguides.utep.edu/SC workshops, where we all have recorded these sessions. We provide the slides, and you can also sign up. I think this is the last one for the semester. But you can keep an eye out in the future where we're going to be presenting more workshops. You can register for them there. You can view past ones there as well. So thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I really appreciate you taking time out to watch this. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to email me. Thank you so much and have a good week.